Hello, this is Dr. Harriet Fraad, bringing you Capitalism Hits Home, a show about how the political and economic forces of our capitalist society affect our personal lives. Today, I want to talk about rape, which is very much in the news. It's in the news because of a huge case in France that has brought out hundreds of thousands of people in protest on the streets of France. In that case, Gisèle Pelicot, a 72-year-old woman's husband, Dominique Pelicot, who's 71, drugged his wife every night for 10 years, and on the internet invited other men to rape her inert body. 80 shockingly, men in France answered that ad. 50 were identified through facial identity and are now on trial along with Gisèle's husband, Dominique. He was discovered because he was trying to photograph under women's skirts, and women complained to the police and he was nabbed. I think if I complained about that in New York, they'd probably snicker, the police, and ignore me. But the police pursued Dominique Pelicot, went to his home, looked on his computer, and discovered 50 videos of men raping Gisèle Pelicot, his wife of 50 years. In response to the outrage that seemingly ordinary men could get erections over the inert body of a woman whose husband is arranging their rape, shocked the French population as much as it shocks the world's population. But, even in the United States, 1 out of 5 women is raped, so rape is no stranger to women. And people were outraged. In 30 cities, people poured into the streets. And Gisèle Pelicot is proudly saying, I transfer the shame. We cannot be ashamed when we are sexually assaulted. We must stand up. One of the men who answered the ad then did that to his own wife with 3 other men. But this case was much bigger. Now, this is not only a French phenomenon. All over the United States, since the 1970s, there are slut walks and take back the night demonstrations of women saying that provocative clothing isn't a crime, rape is a crime. So men have gotten away with that by pointing to our clothing, and that has to end. And millions all over the world have had these strikes. In Mexico, 180,000 women took to the streets against sexual violence and rape. That was on International Women's Day this year, March 8th. In South Africa, millions of women were in the streets against rape, because rape is most often a crime, or at least a reported crime, in South Africa. In Guatemala, there have been huge demonstrations. In Chile, in India, millions of women and men poured into the streets, and tens of thousands of doctors went on strike. When recently, a woman doctor was multiply raped and killed as she tried to get some rest at a hospital because they have very long shifts and isolated rooms where people can take a rest. But rape is big not only in other countries of the world, it's very big in the United States too. 1 out of every 10 women report rape in the military. And that is, and 1 out of about 20 men. And that means that rape is far more prevalent than 1 out of 10 because they were supposed to report to their military commanders who were often right in on the rapes. So that wasn't very helpful. And it's very much an issue that women have to transfer the shame from themselves to the perpetrators of this crime. Lately in the United States, Bill Cosby drugged his victims and raped his drugged victims. R. Kelly did the same. Sean Combs is the latest one this week, who trafficked and raped women, gave them drugs, that gave them wine to drink that had drugs in it, put them out, raped them, and at least in one case that's being pursued right now, photographed the rape and sold it to a porn channel. So that this is not as unusual as it should be. And these rapes often are unreported because women are frightened and feel shamed, and men who are raped similarly feel frightened and ashamed. Now, why rape? What about rape? Well, rape has only been called out recently. In the United States, thanks to the women's liberation movement that began in 1968, in 1975, an extensive book on rape by Susan Brown Miller was published, and nothing has superseded that in its impact and its thoroughness. That was published in 1975, and it's still the authority on rape. But why rape? One of the things that's very clear, not only from Susan Brown Miller's book Against Our Will, but from many other sources, that rape is not about desire. It's not about attraction. It's about domination. Male domination through sex. And why would men need to be dominant? Well, there are psychological reasons as well as cultural reasons, but I'll discuss the psychological first. One of the psychological reasons is explained by the psychologist Nancy Chodorow, which is that women are brought up by women. Early childhood is a matriarchy, where overwhelmingly children are raised by women, by mothers, by babysitters, by nurses, by daycare operators, all women or almost all women. And girls have a present female model, so they can model themselves after the women around them. Boys don't have a present male model who nurtures and cares for them, so they often develop a negative model. To be men is not to be women. And a lot of the pejorative terms insulting men are that they're sissies or they're ladylike. In sports, coaches say, "What's the matter? You have your period?" Which is a terrible insult because you're playing a sport like a woman. And so that there's a negative feeling, I am the not you. And that suspends a lot of compassion, because compassion and empathy are based on the ideas, this could be me. We have continuity as human beings. I feel for you. Obviously, Dominique Pellicot did not feel for his wife, who was drugged and raped. In fact, she developed all sorts of terrible symptoms, gynecological pain, forgetting. And he went with her to these doctor's appointments, seeming very compassionate, even though those multiple rapes had a lot to do with her symptoms. So it's a way of boys identifying as the not female and distancing them from females. Another psychologist, Dorothy Dinnerstein, attributes male violence and male sexual violence towards women from the fact that boys grow up in a matriarchy, and so that their most humiliating and powerless experiences in their lives are at the hands of seemingly omnipotent women, and they develop hatred and a need to revenge themselves on women. So those are factors. Now, of course, they're not factors for every man. Most men are not rapists, although it seems like it's a whole lot more prevalent than one would think. And in many places in the world, a rape victim is a pariah, shunned as dirtied, even though she's a victim. In pre-revolutionary China, a woman was terribly shamed if she was raped. All over Pakistan and India, a raped woman is considered used and discarded. There's a very famous painter called Artemisia Gentileschi from Italy who was raped. Her father was a famous painter, and one of the students at his studio raped her. And the punishment for the rapist, which, by the way, punished the victim, was that the rapist had to marry his victim. She refused and worked in her father's workshop and became a very, very accomplished artist, painting scenes of revenge that women had, or scenes condemning men for their lust. Her most famous paintings are of Judith, the biblical hero, who, when her people were captured, did a seductive dance for Holofernes, the head commander of the opposition, seduced him, and then sawed off his head with a sword. And her most famous paintings are powerful women cutting off the head. This Judith cutting off the head of Holofernes, whose hair is sprouting out through her fingers as she grabs his head, and her handmaiden holding the basket for the head to drop in. In the biblical story, one of the very few that admires women, Holofernes' head was presented on a spike to his troops, who got frightened and ran away. But even in the United States, most trials are not public trials. They're closed trials because women have shame. The woman whose husband got the idea from Dominique Pellicot and drugged his wife and invited people to rape her. So 3 men accepted the invitation before this came out. She wanted a closed trial. She was embarrassed. And one of Gisèle Pellicot's most amazing qualities is that she wants a public trial because she wants people to see what is wrong here. Now, another reason I think that rape works is it works in shame, that men are taught shame about their needs, their sexual needs, their needs also for comfort and kindness, because in the usual macho role, men are not supposed to want hugs or gentleness or kindness or understanding or comfort. But the one need that they are supposed to be allowed to have is sex. And very interestingly enough, in the book The Mothers by Briffaut, the classic exploration of women in history, they cite that there weren't no rapes on the island of Fiji until the missionaries got there and taught people shame about their sexuality. And that shame is avenged, as well as the shame of neediness, the shame of dependence on women, the shame of wishing for hugs and kindness. And that's a very sad thing for men. Recently, there was a case of a man who killed 9 women at his gym. And when they asked him why, he said, they wouldn't go out with me. I'm not a bad person. Oh, he certainly looks like one. I'm not a bad person. I just wanted to go out with somebody, and I was rejected. And so he killed 9 women. He took back his power with a gun because he didn't want to be needy and sad. He wanted to be dominating and triumphant. The 4 biggest capitalist employers, of course, America is a very capitalist country, humiliate their employees. Those employees are, the biggest is Walmart, the Walton family, Amazon, the new owners, Bezos used to own it, fast food, and call centers. Those employees are all on the clock. They have to accomplish a task within a certain number of seconds, or a beeper goes off, reprimanding them. They're like automatons and humiliated. I had a client who briefly worked at Walmart. Even when no one was in his department and he wasn't allowed to leave the department, he could not sit down for a minute. He had to stand up for his whole shift. The members of the Walton family, who are billionaires, were making money. And if you're making money, you don't think about the people who are making you money. Jeff Bezos didn't worry about the warehouse workers who were injured or fainting with exhaustion. He was making money off their labor. Capitalism does that. That's why they have vending machines full of painkillers around the Amazon warehouses, so people can keep doing the repetitive movements they're required to do in the time they're required to do them, even when they're in pain. Capitalism teaches you. It doesn't pay for any employer to give someone a job if that employee is not making more money for the capitalist than the capitalist is paying the employee. So what do you worry if they're tired or if they're getting injured? And that ethos spreads to the rest of our society, where you don't think about the people around you. You don't have compassion for them. You dominate them. And rape is an act of domination, where you don't have compassion for your victim. They're not a person. They're someone for you to dominate and you to use however you need to assert your dominance in the case of rape. Costa Gavros, the brilliant director who directed the films Missing and Z, directed a film called Capital. It was shut down in the United States after it showed for about 2 weeks. But in that, a man is driven to make money, even though he alienates everyone around him. And there's a rape scene where he rapes a woman in order to dominate her. And he loses every human connection, but he feels he's winning because he's making more money. Because in a capitalist system, people who make money are extolled. Look at Trump, bragging how rich he is, even though he's a rapist and cheats people. But he's rich and he's dominant, so he's proud. These are horrible values. A lot of feminists attribute rape to patriarchy, the dominance of men over women. But it needs to be explained, because the male role in capitalism is a terrible role that robs men of their ability to feel the whole range of human feelings. And it robs people to connect with and have empathy for other people. And rape is a result of that lack of empathy, that somebody could rape an inert woman whose husband has invited them to rape her. It's incensed France. It's incensed people all over the world. And because of women's liberation, we are calling it out. There's a wonderful sign in French in one of the demonstrations of millions of people where a woman has a sign, and the sign has the words, "Protect your women." And that is crossed out, and underneath it says, "Educate your sons." Have people have compassion without, so that they can't use another person's body or their labor. So rape is not only patriarchal, it's capitalist. It's part of the being trained not to feel for the other person. That's one of the ways that capitalism affects personal life, as it affects sexual assault. Thank you very much. That's all for today. Goodbye.